to investigate this case. This settled response is wholly inadequate. Laos must meet its international obligations that I've already described to carry out a credible investigation into this case, and crucially, to keep Shui Meng informed of the progress and the status of the investigation. If the investigation is ongoing, good, but at least inform Shui Meng as to its status and any progress that has or has not been made. And of course, if a crime has been committed, then Laos must bring those perpetrators to justice. And in our view, and in the view of the expert who reviewed this case, Laos has all of the tools necessary to carry out this investigation, at least many of the recommendations that are contained in the report. And if they don't, I'm sure that there is a line out the door, a queue of other states who would be willing to provide technical assistance at a moment's notice. And so we therefore hope that today's event keeps this case alive, keeps it in the media, ensures that this enforced disappearance is not forgotten, and will lead to a re-energized and real, renewed commitment on the part of Laos to investigate this case.
Thank you. Thank you, Kingsley, for guiding us through the legal aspects of Sombath's disappearance and the next step and suggestions for the Lao government to thoroughly and adequately investigating the case. Next, Shui Meng, she's going to talk about her personal experience of obviously the impact that Sombath's disappearance had on her personal life, her interaction with the government, but also the broader impact on Lao civil society. Thank you, Shui Meng.
Good morning, and thank you for coming. First, let me thank FIDH and the Sombath Initiative for organizing this event today to mark the 1,000th day of Sombath's disappearance. And it's particularly also want to thank Kingsley, who showed you the sequence of what happened at the point of the abduction. Now, some of you who have not been following the case so closely, this might have been the first time you see those video footages. And you might wonder why we were so lucky to be able to get those footages. The reason why we were able to get it is that because on that very evening, Sombath and I were together. I was driving in a vehicle in front of him, and he was following me. We were going home for dinner, and we traveled on the same route to go home as we do every day. And we passed the police post. And when I noticed that he was not following my vehicle when I looked back at the rear view mirror, I was surprised, but it did not really affect me very much. I thought, you know, he was maybe stopped somewhere, pick up groceries or whatever. And I went home, and he did not turn up for dinner. And I looked. I went out to look for him that very evening. It was a Saturday. I reported his missing to the district police office the very next day, which was Sunday. And in Laos, Sundays is a very, very sleepy day. Nobody works. And I was advised to go to the municipality police station and make a report. And they were telling me that I should try and see whether there are CCTV footages in the video room, since there are many cameras recently installed all over Vientiane, and which was what I did. I had no idea and no expectation that that was what we would find. And when I found those footages, we asked for the tape, but the police officers manning the video room say no, they cannot give it to us. But we asked them to re-show the footages and captured that on cameras, on the phone. And that is the reason why the footages are so blurry. Up to now, the government and the police has not released the original tape to anybody. So when the police and now claim that the person getting off the jeep is not Sombath, that is a lie. I know Sombath. I know what he was wearing on that very evening. I know his truck. And now if they say we don't even know whether the truck actually belonged to Sombath, it's just ridiculous. So that's the background. For those of you who have not seen those footages or have just become aware of that actual scene of abduction. So today marks the 1,000 days since Sombath disappeared on the 15th of December 2012. 1,000 days. 1,000 days of waiting, 1,000 days of anxiety, and 1,000 days of nothing. Nothing from the police that will give me a shred of hope that they are looking for Sombath and they will be finding Sombath. 1,000 days of empty promises of continuing investigation. If they're really carrying out the investigation, that'll be good. But I don't know to what extent they are doing it and how they are doing it. I keep asking myself this question. How is it possible in a tiny, tiny city like Vientiane, when there are police and security systems in every neighborhood and every village, why is it so difficult to investigate a case in which the abduction has been caught on camera? How could it be possible that in 1,000 days, the police has claimed they have not found the jeep, they have not traced the truck that took Sombath away, they have not found Sombath. In fact, they say they have found nothing. How is that possible? Yet, over the past 1,000 days, there were news reports, many, many news reports, that surveillance cameras installed all over Vientiane now has helped the police solve many cases. Cases of robberies, cases of drug trafficking, cases of murders, accidents, etc., etc. So why is, in this particular case, the police has found nothing? Actually, when my family and I obtained those video footages, I was hopeful. I was actually very hopeful because it's not in many cases of disappearances, abductions, that you have such strong evidence. I took those footages and showed them to government officials, people that Sombath had worked with, government partners. I showed them to the UN offices. I showed them to various embassies in Vientiane, urging them to please help, urge the government, appeal to the government to surface Sombath. And in those early days, many people did. They were surprised. They were just as surprised when they saw the footages. And they promised that they would look into what had happened, and they felt that it would be a case that would be resolved very quickly. And as Kingsley has pointed out, the news of Sombath's disappearance was issued 4 days later, on the 19th of December, through what is called an official statement issued by the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. in the Foreign Affairs official statement, it acknowledged that Sombath was stopped. It acknowledged that Sombath was stopped at the police checkpoint. It also acknowledged that Sombath's jeep was driven away by an unknown person, and that a white truck did stop, and several people were seen getting into the white truck. The statement, however, said it could not verify that Sombath was one of the people who got into the truck. It also went on to say that Sombath could have been kidnapped for reasons of personal conflict or business conflict. But it ended up with a promise to seriously to investigate the whereabouts of Sombath and to return him safely to me and the family. I was hopeful, as I say. I was hopeful that the government would make good on its promise. Now the investigation has gone on for 1,000 days. And the official response to queries as to what happened to Sombath, I have written so many letters to high-level officials, to people I know. I've also asked the help of friends and families, of people who know the highest echelon within the party and the government, to ask them and appeal for a quick resolution. Nothing. Nothing. And now, as Kingsley pointed out, in more recent responses to inquiries about Sombath's disappearance, when it was raised in official meetings like Human Rights Dialogue, when ambassadors officially asked the government what happened to Sombath, and where delegations who have gone in, parliamentarians from the ASEAN region, parliamentarians from the European Union, at my urging and at the urgings of support of human rights organizations and partner agencies, they have gone in several times and they have asked the same questions. But increasingly, there were contradictions and confusion in the official response. And as Kingsley pointed out, in some of the recent responses, there was backpedaling. Or maybe the person that went into the police post is not Sombath. Or maybe the jeep that was driven away is not Sombath. There's no way to verify, the statements say, that the person who got out of the jeep was Sombath, that the jeep driven away it had belonged to Sombath. But I can tell you, I've lived with Sombath for more than 30 years. How can I not know whether the person I see in the tape is Sombath or not? How can I not know that the jeep was not Sombath's jeep? But anyway, be it as it may, I continue to appeal to the Lao government to investigate, because it is the responsibility of the government. A crime has been committed in Vientiane. A crime has been committed in front of a police post. It doesn't matter whether Sombath was kidnapped, Sombath was this or that. It is still the responsibility of the state to investigate a crime. So I urge and I urge. I met some police, but nowadays the police don't even see me. I haven't met the police for a long time. Every time I go and meet them, it's the same story. We are still investigating. Oh, you know, Laos is a big country, and this and this and that. I have been patient. I have tried to be patient, but it is difficult. So, in the absence of any response from the government, and with no satisfactory action on the investigation, I'm left with one avenue. I'm left with the avenue to continue to urge support for representatives of embassies, governments based in Bangkok, based in Vientiane, or with embassies responsible for Laos based in Bangkok. I've asked the UN agencies, the human rights groups, civil society groups, development partners, all to try to seek answers from the Lao government. I've also submitted a report to the working group against enforced and involuntary disappearances based in Geneva. I have traveled to Geneva twice. I have met with so many people. I have gone all over different parts of the world, talking to government leaders, talking to civil society groups, talking to people on what they can do to help Sombath. Inside Laos, I've done all I could. I continue to ask. I have even submitted a letter to the court to ask for help. A few months later, when I went to follow up what happened to the letter to the court, the clerk said, "Oh, by the way, we have lost the letter." They've lost the letter in a court. How could this be? Okay, I say, all right. Now I'm considering what I should do. What legal avenues do I have? ICJ has published a very, very convincing report by experts who said very clearly that with the evidence that they have reviewed, this is an imminently solvable case, and have offered assistance and concrete recommendations, all of which have fallen on deaf ears. But the pressure on the Lao government to provide answers have continued, and to some extent, I have drawn some comfort from these actions, that there are still governments across the region, human rights groups, ordinary people who have continued to ask, where is Sombath? Kingsley referred to the process of the Universal Periodic Review. 10 countries, including Australia, Canada, Finland, Germany, Luxembourg, Poland, Portugal, Sweden, and Switzerland, and the UK, have directly asked about the Sombath's disappearance and recommended that the Lao government to investigate and resolve the case expeditiously. Another 5 states, while not naming Sombath, had raised questions on enforced disappearances in Laos as an outstanding human rights issue to be seriously addressed. I was told that naming a specific case in a UPR process is very, very rare. But as Kingsley said in the response, and as also Andre said, the responses were confusing, the responses were contradictory, and now I'm still waiting. So, sadly, while the issue of Sombath disappearance has remained a concern for the international community, this is not the case inside the country. Inside Laos, there is fear, an increasing fear of even mentioning the name of Sombath. A few people have quietly told me that they have been warned not to raise the issue of Sombath's disappearance, not to talk about Sombath's development work over the past 30 years, and not even to mention the work of Badak, an organization that Sombath had founded to support his community education and youth development work. They were warned not to talk about Sombath or his work. Why? Why is that so? I don't know. In fact, Sombath's disappearance has caused very serious and negative reverberations to the work of civil society organizations all over Laos, both local as well as international. Some young people that Sombath and Padak had trained and monitored over the years have actually left development work and joined the private sector. Those who have continued to work in the development field have been very careful to stick to traditional service delivery activities such as education, health, and water and sanitation. They have avoided any work which can vaguely be interpreted as controversial, like land issues, like natural resource issues. They have kept clear of those issues, although in the past they have started to work on those areas. To many civil society workers in Laos, Sombath's abduction has caused so much fear, mainly because Sombath has always been seen as someone who has steered away from any political activities against the government and has always been very cautious and non-confrontational. Hence, many Lao people are at loss as to why a man like Sombath, who had worked so hard for the betterment of the rural poor in Laos, and who is so well known and respected, could meet with such a terrible fate, the fate of enforced disappearance. The only conclusion the Lao people could draw from this is that if this could happen to Sombath, there is no guarantee that any development worker in Laos could be safe. I believe that as long as Sombath's disappearance is not resolved in a satisfactory manner, this atmosphere of fear will prevail among the development community in Laos, and it will hinder the growth of Laos civil society. It seems like that is exactly what the Lao authorities want. Keep civil society in Laos in check and let the wall of silence continue to fall on the case of Sombath inside the country. So where does this leave me? When will I ever know the truth of what happened to Sombath? After 1,000 days of waiting day after day, and enduring the endless anguish and uncertainty of the unknown. But painful as it is, Sombath's disappearance has also taught me one thing. That is, doing nothing and keeping quiet is not an option. Being afraid or being fearful is also not an option. Over the past 1,000 days, I've come to learn quite a lot about the issue of enforced disappearances, both inside Laos and also outside the country. I'm now connected to a network of human rights organizations and victims networks. I'm now connected with Ankana's organization, and she has given me a lot of strength and advice. Many of these other victims and their families have struggled economically, socially, and have endured impunity of such violence on themselves and their families. But what amazed me most is that many of these victims have somehow found strength and continue to fight for truth and justice for their loved ones. Some for more than 10 years or even 20 years. Unfortunately, many cases of enforced disappearances have remained unresolved. But there were also reports of some successes. Some disappeared people have surfaced after many years. Or some children who have disappeared with their mothers have been miraculously reunited with their birth family after many, many years. It shows clearly that the light that keeps our human spirit and hopes in search for the truth and justice can never be snuffed out, not even under the most difficult circumstances. And it is this connection and solidarity with the victims' networks and with the victims of the disappeared themselves that continue to keep me going, to keep my hope alive. Knowing that I am not alone in my struggle has steeled my resolve to continue my search for Sombath. I will leave no stone unturned, and I will do whatever I can. I will knock at every door, inside and outside the country, asking and appealing to anyone who can help, to the government, to any organization, to find Sombath and to hold the Lao government responsible and to make good on its promise to me and the international community to resolve the case of Sombath. The truth must be found and justice must be restored. That is the promise I've made to myself. And that is the promise I have silently made to Sombath. Thank you.
Thank you, Shui Meng, for your very personal insight into your almost 3-year battle to seek truth and justice for Sombath's disappearance. I will now turn it over to Ankana Nilapayjit. I didn't mention it in my introduction, but as probably most of you know, Kun Ankana has also direct experience of enforced disappearances. Her husband, human rights lawyer Somchai Nilapayjit, disappeared in Bangkok's Ramkhamhaeng on March 12, 2004. So she's been battling through the Thai legal system for over 11 years, all the way up to the Supreme Court to find justice for her husband's disappearance. And as Shui Meng said, Ankana has been very supportive of other victims of enforced disappearances, and I think she will probably mention a few cases. So, Ankana, please.
Thank you very much, Andrea. Sawadee ka, and good morning, everybody. Today marks the 1,000 days of the enforced disappearance of Sombath Somphone. Today marks the 512 days of enforced disappearance of current activist Polity or Billy Raktongcharoen. Similarly, today marks the 4,199 days that Somchai Nilapayjit, the human rights lawyer that has been kidnapped by the police and made disappeared from his family and society. Also today marks nearly the 24 years or nearly 9,000 days that Mr. Thanong Po-an, a former labor union leader that had been disappeared. And today, there are many unidentified dead persons who have not been brought home and their whereabouts still unknown. It is hard to imagine how immense the impact caused by enforced disappearance on the victims themselves, their community, and their society, as well as directly on the economic, social, and cultural rights. In addition, enforced disappearance is the creation of ambiguity in between existence and non-existence, life or death. It has made the traumas inflicted that more complicated and aggravated than other kinds of violence. Enforced disappearance had even caused tremendous fear among families of the victims. Is that not just